If you felt stuck trying to lose weight, you're not alone. Enter Weight Loss by Hers. It's designed to support you in reaching your goals. And Hers now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hers, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first GLP-1 available in a pill, so there are no needles needed. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hers makes it simple to find an approach that fits your needs and your budget if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. It's weight loss designed to work with your life. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/women to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/women. forhers.com/women. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We are back. The Saints Block Party podcast brought to you by Precious Works LLC. Any business website needs, reach out to our guy, Bajan. It is time, y'all. It is the sixth annual Tony Pauline of Essentially Sports joining the Saints Block Party podcast to talk about the Saints, the upcoming draft. The draft is on the 23rd. It's right around the corner. And this is always a big episode for us, as we, 6 years ago on the 17th of April, Ryan and I started a podcast that we thought was going to be a one-off, and now 6 years later, it's become its whole thing, a brand, a business. So it's always an honor to have Tony come on because he was an essential part of our growth and our journey. So thank you so much for joining us, Tony, and hopping on and talking Saints draft with us as always. We started in 2020. Our first episode was April 17th of 2020.
That was, I guess it was right in the middle of COVID. Let's try.
Yes.
I guess it was good, bad then, huh?
It was. And before you joined, I was actually just doing a little research because this has been a thing for us on this podcast. The Saints have drafted 8 offensive players in those 6 years since you've been coming on the show. I'm gonna list these players in the last 6 years. Well, I guess technically 5 because you're not counting this year's draft class. But the players have been Adam Troutman, Kwan Baker, Chris Olave, A.T. Perry, Kendre Miller, Bub Memes, Devin Neal, and Maloki Matavo, what they drafted last year, the tight end. That's the 8 offensive players that they drafted, and essentially going on year 6. Please, is there any hope that this team, which had a really good draft last year, Tyler Shuck, Kelvin Banks, got some good players, Quincy Riley, is this the year where potentially the team shifts their focus and look at adding additional weapons in the draft? They've already have in free agency with Travis Achan and got David Edwards, but actual juice at the skill positions. Is that a chance that that's going to happen this year?
Well, before coming on here, I reached out to my guy and I said, do you think the Saints would draft Kenyon Sadiq with the 8th pick? And he was like, they could, which probably means that there's a very good chance that they could draft Kenyon Sadiq. And I know that when one of the years we spoke, you guys were dying for the Saints to draft Brock Bowers.
Yes.
And, you look at it, People think I'm crazy when I put Kenyon Sadiq with the Saints at number 8, but you look at last year, the Bears selected Colston Loveland with the 10th pick of the draft. The Colts selected Tyler Warren with the 16th pick of the draft, and Kenyon Sadiq is much higher rated. And that was in a draft that was really strong at the top with the Travis Hunters, with the Abdul Carters, Mason Grahams, Armand Membos. Colston Loveland still won 10. Kenyon Sadiq is graded much, much higher than either of those tight ends. I would say compare him to Brock Bowers. He's not as polished as Brock Bowers, but he's after their upside. So do I think there's a chance? I absolutely do think there's a possibility. We'll see what happens with the selections. Is Carnell Tate somehow taken before the Saints are called to the clock? I don't think that's going to happen. So I think they'll have they'll have an opportunity to draft a good skill player, a good offensive weapon for Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And when you dropped that mock with Sadiq going at 8, caught a lot of people off guard because they just one, because the Saints don't draft a lot of tight ends just historically,
Right.
and 2, that's just not a place where a lot of people saw Sadiq going. But me and Adam looked at it, it was like, that actually makes a little sense. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you look at what Kellen Moore has been trying to do recently, working out a lot of offensive skill position. He really wants to upgrade, the offensive skill position weapons for Tyler Shuck. So it did make a lot of sense. Are there any other players that you could see the Saints going at 8, not offensively or defensively, guys that you think or that you've been hearing that could kind of fit into that slot?
Well, I guess Reuben Bain's got to fit in that conversation. What's going to happen after the news today? It could go either way. And there's talk that they need an edge. They obviously need an edge rusher. And you know how Mickey Loomis loves to draft guys on the lines of scrimmage, year after
We know.
I think that's a possibility. I think that really anybody other than Carnell Tate or Kenyon Sadiq at that position, as far as a pass catcher or a weapon, would be a reach. And I even think that Carnell Tate is a bit of a reach at number 8. I think he would be selected because he's a top receiver, not that he's the 8th best player in the draft.
I would agree with that. One thing that I do find fascinating, and it may not happen, but what's your just overall sense of Jeremiah's Love draft range? Because I do have this feeling, potentially, I get a sense that the team really does like him. And even though they added Travis Etienne in free agency, if he just happened to be there at 8, potentially that could be a pairing where you add a strength on the strength and you have an identity for the team and a very strong run game for the quarterback. But is that position is his stock kind of tied to the Titans in terms of maybe what they do and maybe how high or how low he may go?
I struggle to see the Titans taking Jeremiah Love at 4, especially with Robert Saleh there as their new head coach, and even Borgonzi. You look at Saleh when he was with the Jets. He wasn't making the calls, but he was involved, and they were drafting, Jermaine Johnson, who he traded for, Will McDonald, when they really didn't need an edge rusher. They were drafting edge rushers. So I think it's going to be a pass rusher, especially in a draft that's heavy of pass rushers. Mm-hmm. And you look at Borgonzi, who comes from the Chiefs, where they had a lot of success with guys like Isaiah Pacheco and late-round picks. I struggle to see the Saints taking Jeremiah Love that early. Now, I know they like Mike Washington, and you don't know what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara. So I think in the second round, a guy like Mike Washington, who would be a great complement to Travis Etienne, is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. It's interesting to see where Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
Where does he go? You know what I'm saying? Because the Chiefs just paid, Kenneth Walker. The Saints just paid Kenny Etienne. Okay, the Titans don't take him. Say he gets past Washington. Then it's like, okay, how far does Jeremiah Love fall? Because, the kid is ridiculously talented. But then it's just about finding that match, that team.
I struggle seeing the Commanders pass on him. I mean, they've
Yeah.
used running back by committee. Jaden Daniels is coming off a disappointing season. Granted, he was injured. You want to make Jaden Daniels better, get him an offensive weapon like Jeremiah Love, who can not only carry the ball, but is a terrific pass catcher out of the backfield. I struggle, seeing him get past the Commanders. Again, with the money that the Saints paid to ATN, where does he fall? I mean, would
That's
Dallas
all
take
good.
him at 12? That's got to be really, really enticing for Dallas.
Mm.
At what point in time does he become such great value that team may trade up?
No, it's going to be very fascinating to see how it all plays out. Another player who just because of just this draft where the positional value is maybe doesn't align with what the NFL typically likes. Like a player that Ryan and I both love is Caleb Downs. And his value to me is very interesting too, because I believe like the Saints have liked him all throughout the process. You could look and see he would be a great fit for Brandon Staley's defense and the star role. But like he go as you could make an argument, you can go as high as 5 to the Giants or to the Dolphins or to Dallas, like, and all of that would make sense. Where, like, just in general, like, where are you hearing his ranges is like, and what's just your overall impression of Caleb Downs just as a player?
I love Downs as a player. I thought early on the Jets could take him at 2. Then they made the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick, so that's off the board. Good for the Jets for making that trade. I think Caleb Downs, people are going to try and poke holes in his game. Yeah, he wasn't super productive in 2025, but he was asked to play a different position. He was asked to play a different sort of safety role with Matt Patricia. You go back to 2024, he was all over the place, making play after play after play. It was just like, wow. So if you base it on 2025, you're not going to have a very high view of opinion of Caleb Downs, which I think is wrong. You got to go back and look at the 2 years prior to that. Where
Mm-hmm.
can he go? I would agree the Giants at number 5 have got to consider him, even though they've got 2 safeties there. One they paid a lot of money to. I think the Saints, I think the Bengals. I don't think he gets past the Bengals because they need a
Mm-hmm.
lot of help in their secondary. They need a lot of help at safety. I would be very surprised if he got past the Bengals at number 10.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. Like that would be crazy. There was a lot of hubbub last night about, they come out a report about Bain about a car accident he got in a couple years ago. Someone, unfortunately lost their life. Then there was like another citation that he got a year later. Just not so much about that, but there's obviously players have things that happen or there's character concerns and stuff like that. A lot of times us as fans don't know about it. Teams know about it, obviously, much more in advance of us. Are there any players that come to mind for you that are like, that you probably know some stuff about or you've heard some stuff where it's like, yeah, this guy is probably highly rated, but there's some stuff in the background that teams are worried about that most people just don't know about?
The answer is yes. I mean, I don't know if you want me to give the names, but the answer is yes. I mean, going back to Bain, I had heard about Bain back in January, about the situation with Bain back in January. There wasn't a lot of detail given to me, but I had heard about this. There was a situation with a car and someone had died. But the way it was presented to me it wasn't that Bain was implicated. The implication or the bigger problem, if you will, kind of rested with the University of Miami, who tried to sweep everything under the rug, which I guess they had successfully done. And it was compared to what happened. What happened with Rasheed Rice a couple of seasons ago, where SMU basically swept everything under the rug with what he did while he was at school, and we've seen what a problem that has turned out to be. Now, it's a different situation between Rasheed Rice and Ruben Bain. The logic to your question is yes. I think we're going to see some people, some players fall and come Saturday night, if they end up in the 6th or 7th round or they go undrafted, people are going to scratch their heads. And there's 2 guys I can think of right off the top of my head that are going to fall. I mean, Malachi Lawrence, people projecting him in the 1st round. This is something I'll talk about. A lot of teams are really upset with Malachi Lawrence because he didn't do any position drills at his pro day, and teams flew in to work him out, to watch him do position drills, and all he did was stand on the sidelines in sweats. He didn't measure. He didn't get on the scale. Kind of reminded me of DeJuan Jones a couple of years ago when I went to the Ohio State pro day. Watch C.J. Stroud throw the ball to Jackson Smith-Njigba, and DeJuan Jones basically sat there in his Ohio State warm-up suit and did nothing, and teams were not happy with that. That was the situation with Malachi Lawrence a couple of weeks ago at the Central Florida Pro Day. There are some guys, we'll see what happens. Maybe you want to have me on post-draft, then we'll talk about it then, but the answer is yes.
Yo, what up, Wolf? What are you looking at?
Man, I'm checking out this website. This site is cheeks, bro.
In the 21st century? How do you have a crappy website? Couldn't be me.
They need to hit up our guy Bijan with Precious Works. Precious Works offers to not only build you a website that's tailored to you and your customers' needs, but also to continue to manage and maintain it so you can focus on your business. Don't have much time? Precious Works is just what you need. No out-of-the-box stuff like Squarespace or Wix. Precious Works will create a site for you. You won't have to worry about plugin updates, security, or things like that because Precious Works will maintain all of that and be available to you 24/7. Bijan set up Saints Block Party Podcast website for us a few years ago and hit it out the park. He also keeps it up to date and helps us anytime we want to add something new like a form or the prospect matching tool that we did for the NFL draft. It's like having your own personal developer just a text or a call away. Precious Works has worked with everyone from small businesses to large firms, so no job is too big or too small. If you're in the need of a website or you currently have one, but you want to upgrade it, give Bijan a holler at Precious Works. You can get with him at Bijan at Precious Works, Bijon at precious.works, or go to precious.works for his website. Make sure to tell him Saints Black Party sent you.
Something you just hit on that I find just so fascinating, just in current modern day draft world, is just how different things are in terms of just prospect testing and athletic testing. Like, maybe a lot of prospects aren't doing like the agility drills. And obviously teams have been able to get answers, whether it be like the tracking in college, but what's just your overall sense of how teams are handling a lot of prospects choosing potentially maybe not to do the agility drills or being very specific in which ones they're choosing to do as kind of these years have progressed and things have evolved?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, there were a lot of guys this year. Max Clare, the tight end from Ohio State, didn't do any testing. I mean,
Caden Curry too, I believe, right?
Caden Curry, exactly. Another guy, and a lot of times when you're talking about guys, especially Caden Curry's situation where he's going to be a late round pick and he's not testing, that's going to send up some red flags. Now, what happens is when you don't test at the combine, before the testing begins, players are medically checked out. And sometimes players will be medically excluded because of an ankle injury or a hamstring injury. There's no medical testing that goes on at pro day. So when a guy says, I can't run because I hurt my ankle or my hamstring's tight and I hurt my hamstring last week, so I'm not going to test. Teams don't have a way of backing that up with a medical. So yeah, I've noticed a lot of guys this year who have done no testing at all. Obviously, you got to go back to the film. And, what happens is the teams make, specifically with the 40, they have estimated times.
Right.
Oftentimes, they're way off, but they have estimated times, and they will rely on those estimated times. Keon Crawford, the sort of undersized pass rusher from Auburn, interesting case. He's 6'4", almost 6'4", 250 pounds. He was estimated to run a 4.81 in the 40. He never ran at the combine, never ran at pro day. So now here's this smaller, undersized edge rusher who doesn't run the 40. You don't have a 10 split on him. You don't have a 40 time on him. He's small. You're going to rely on the film, and I like him on film, but the athleticism isn't there. Where do you draft a guy like that? I know some teams that have a third-round grade on him. I know some teams that have a late day 3 grade on him because of that.
One player that's pretty much that a lot of Saints fans are interested in is Jordan Tyson,
Yeah.
out of Arizona State. He's supposed to be working out this Friday, I guess. Gonna do a workout for NFL teams to showcase. He's been battling through his hamstring injury. What's your sense with him as far as where teams are with him? Obviously, a guy that's been banged up a ton throughout his career, finally gets to show something to teams. So, what's the sense with him? Because I feel like his range could be huge.
Well, I guess I always thought it was crazy that people were mocking him in the top 10. A lot of, early on, people thought he'd go number 5 to the Giants, which I thought was insane. It reminded me of Corey Davis. If you remember the receiver from Western Michigan, who was the fifth pick of the draft, the Tennessee Titans. I kind of compared it to that. I like Tyson. He's a terrific pass catcher. He's focused. He's natural. He runs good routes, but he's not very big. He's not very fast. And when you're drafting a receiver that early, you need something that he's going to separate, Travis Hunter, the game breaker that he was at the receiver position, although he's going to play cornerback this year. You need something that physically separates you from the rest of the group. I never saw that with Jordan Tyson. I talked to his people early on, and I said, with the injuries and with everything else, I don't think he's going to be anything more than a mid-first round pick. And like you pointed out, the injuries have been persistent with this guy. As I'm getting a phone call, we'll do that. The injuries have been persistent with this guy, not just this season. If you remember, he missed the Arizona State playoff game. The first in the first round, I believe it was against Texas because he was injured.
Yeah.
So, and that's going to be a big scarlet letter around him come draft day. I don't see him going in the top half of round 1. I think, maybe Pittsburgh in the 20s, maybe Carolina, at 19. The Panthers, who I think have done a great job in the offseason, but I don't see him in the top half of round 1.
Could he fall to round 2? Like, is there a chance he could slip to round 2?
I'd be shocked because when you look at the bottom half of round 1, you look at, I mentioned the Panthers, I mentioned the Steelers. I don't think the Eagles will take a receiver in round 1. The Browns, if they don't take a receiver with that first pick, the Bills are still going to look for a receiver. The Niners, there are more teams that need receivers. The Chiefs in the bottom half of round 1 than there will be receivers available.
One player that you were previously linking both the Niners and the Broncos before they traded for Waddle was Louisville receiver Chris Bell.
Right.
We have talked about Chris Bell ad nauseum on this podcast because both Chris Bell himself, it started at the Combine, he said at his pro day, he is letting it known that he wants to be paired with Tyler Shuck in New Orleans and is basically trying to convince Shuck to convince the front office. But because he's coming off that injury, for, potentially, I guess what 42 would be the pick. Like, one, what are the chances that he's there at 42? And then secondly, what are you kind of hearing just in regards to just him overall as a player and how he's doing in his recovery? Because I believe you reported that he's ahead of his scheduled recovery.
I reported that in January at the season when and there was talk then that he could land late in round 1 before KC Concepcion and a couple of the other, Omar Cooper, had declared and really started to take off. Now, where could he go? I think right now I have him going 39 to the Browns because I don't have the Browns taking a receiver with either of their first 2 picks. You look at the top of round 2, the Jets, the Titans, the Raiders, the Giants, to a lesser extent, the Texans, the Browns, even the Chiefs. These are all teams that need a receiver. And depending on what they do in round 1, some of those teams, the Chiefs and the Jets, have multiple picks in round 1. They could turn around and look at receiver like Chris Bell, in round 2, especially, the Raiders. The Raiders aren't going to win in 2026. So while you're developing Fernando Mendoza, why not bring a receiver, a talented receiver like a Chris Bell, who you can be patient with because there's no urgency to win right away, and get him into the mix?
Yeah, that'd be fascinating. I keep saying, like, Chris Bell at 42, everybody likes to do these mock draft simulators, and Chris Bell is always there at 42. I'm like,
always.
Man,
Always.
I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it in reality. I've seen too many drafts where the second round comes and then receivers just go flying off the board.
Line.
Yeah. Another guy we talked about on the podcast was Gerard McCoy out of Tennessee. Just a guy that, when you look at his talent, just fits what the Saints like, and we just can't shake the feeling that he would be a guy that the Saints could fall in love with, even as early as 8. But that would be crazy to me with him missing like a whole season. But what are NFL teams thinking about him, about Gerard McCoy?
Well, I think he quelled some of those concerns with the 4.38 he ran at Pro Day. He's got an upside. I think the fact of the matter is if Jermod McCoy had played in 2025 and played as expected, he's a lock top 10 pick. He's the first. He's very likely the first cornerback off the board. He's got better size than Mansour Delane.
Yep.
He's physical, and I like Mansour Delane a lot, but he's got a lot of physical attributes which gives him an edge over Delane. So he's probably Jermod McCoy, the first cornerback taken if he was healthy and played. That being the case, I think he's the cornerback number 2, but I don't think he's going to go far after Mansour Delane because of the fact that, cornerback is a priority position on draft weekend. They go much higher than expected, and he's got great upside. Plus, the fact is this, we talked about Chris Bell. Jermod McCoy's injury was 11 months before Chris Bell's. I mean, it was January of 2025. So there's no question he'll be ready. He'll be ready for camp. He's just got to get himself into football shape.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. The last one I had, Tony, as we kind of wrap this up, and again, thank you so much for joining us and doing this every year as always. Just who are I guess if you could give 2 players that maybe one player that you're higher on, just like your guy, doesn't have to be like a round 1 guy, just any guy that you're just higher on that you think just going to work out in the league. And then maybe another player where maybe the consensus is higher of what you may actually think about that said player.
I like Emmanuel Pregnon of Oregon a lot. I think he's a plug-and-play type of offensive lineman, the guard from Oregon. He is a punch-in-the-mouth type of guy. He was good at USC. He was better at Oregon. He's a guy who is a mauler on the line of scrimmage. He's very effective on the second level. So here's a guy who maybe he goes late first round, probably goes the top of the second round. I think he's going to be starting as a rookie. I've never been sold on Emmanuel McNeil Warren. I know a lot of people love him. I know he's got some great stats. He's got decent size, but to me, he's more opportunistic than he is a refined, talented defensive back with outstanding ball skills. I think there may be some bumps in the road with him. Plus, he's not really super fast. He's fast enough, but he's not fast as far as today's defensive backs in the NFL are concerned.
That's interesting. I guess my last one, you're pretty plugged in with the Jets. It looks like David Bailey is a lock at 2.
I don't know. I haven't heard. I'm sure I will later this week. I'm leaning towards Arvell Reese.
Yeah, it seems between one of those 2, right?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Arvell Reese, who I think can do more things. I like David Bailey, but Arvell Reese can rush the passer. Plus, he's much better off-ball linebacker. I think I'm thinking right now that's the way it's going to go. Maybe Bailey goes to Arizona. Jeremiah Love could go to Arizona. I think that would be a good fit. But the interesting thing is, as opposed to years past, we all know that Fernando Mendoza is going number 1.
Yeah,
and really the drama starts with the second selection, which is that's the way the league wants it.
Yeah, it's the Jets and the Cardinals. Like, I think the Cardinals are the most interesting team in the entire top 10 because they need so much, and it's just impossible to get a read of they could go offensive lineman, they could go Jeremiah Love, they could go pass. It's a huge range of where they could go, and so those picks at 2 and 3 are really going to really shape the rest of the top 10 of the draft.
It will, and the Cardinals with the defensive line are like the Saints with the offensive line. The Saints continually drafting offensive linemen, with early picks, yet they always seem to need them. You look at the Cardinals, you look at their last past 6, 7 drafts, they've drafted defensive linemen and edge rushers, yet they still need them. I mean, personally, And I know this is starting to build some, there's a narrative building. I think they should take Jeremiah Love. I mean, they don't have
Mm.
a
Why
feature
not?
back. They signed a rotational guy, Tyler Algier in the offseason. You know, you don't know Jacoby Brissett's your quarterback. You do have an offensive minded head coach now that was hired in the offseason. And, you know, it's a situation where he's the Jeremiah Love is one of the top 3 players in this draft,
Yeah.
as opposed to, say, taking an offensive tackle, right tackle, which would be a massive reach as far as I'm concerned, that 3rd pick.
And I think an underrated thing about maybe them taking Love at 3 is, like, in theory, like, that's a nice, like, sales advertising, like putting him on the season tickets, putting him on the mantra outside of the stadium. Like, though, like, I don't think people, like, regular people understand how sometimes, like, that does play into the mind of, like, owners when they're making these draft selections and these picks.
8 games a year in a warm weather, nice weather stadium, you know, plays in a conference that's relatively good weather. Why not?
It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. We would love to potentially hopefully get you back on for a post-draft show after the Saints have made their selection so we can talk about what the draft class ends up being. As always, Tony, we appreciate you so much for joining us every year, and everyone who is listening and watching, appreciate the love and support. And with that, we are out.
Peeps.